So the best way to deal with food waste is to have no food waste at all. And that is the general concept behind the idea I'm talking about today. And like all good stories, mine starts here, in the bin. It was a pretty weird story, but basically when I was a student, I was poor, I didn't have much money, and I was buying cheap food all the time. I'd buy cheap bread, I'd buy cheap noodles, I'd buy cheap meat. You know, my nutrition was terrible. I ate really, really badly. So one time I spoke to my friends, more complained to my friends about how badly I was eating, and they told me that they go dumpster diving. And I went, what is that? What are you talking about? And so they told me that dumpster diving is basically when you wait until a supermarket has closed, and then you sneak around the back, you open up the bins, and you take all the food that they've thrown away from that day. And so in my head, I was a bit cautious about the whole thing. The idea of me stealing food from a bin sounds disgusting. My idea of a bin is smelly, it's gross, it's gross, it's horrible. And when I was there, it was actually hidden treasure. It was amazing, the food I found in there. I found steak, I found duck, I found venison, I found amazing sausages. I found incredible food just being thrown away. I ate like a king. I ate better then than I do now, because now I pay for food, so I'm an idiot, apparently. But it made me really think about how bad food waste must be. You know, if this is what's happening in one supermarket, how big is the problem as a whole? You know, it's not just in supermarkets, it's all the way from farm through to fork, basically. That's the general concept. And so without further ado, here are some big facts about food waste. Did you know that we waste 1.3 billion tons of food? That's a third of all food made for human use never sees a human mouth. That is a lot to throw away. It costs around It costs around $940 billion in lost revenue. That is a lot of money. It's the same as hiring Lionel Messi 10,000 times in a year, which says a lot about how much food waste costs, but also a lot about how much Lionel Messi makes in a year. So, of course, the problem isn't only just an economic problem. The problem's also a global impact. There's an environmental issue with food waste. Did you know that food waste actually makes up 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions? 10% from one topic, from one thing. If you count food as a whole, it's about 25% of all greenhouse gases. And to put this into context was a lot harder. 10% is a lot in terms of the emissions. So bear with me. It's the same as all of us in the world drinking 125 cups of tea a day for a year. That is a lot of tea, and even the most patriotic British person can't drink that, so do not try that at home. It's going bad enough as it is. But in any case, it really made me think about how big this problem is. It's huge. So what are we doing? I know as a customer, as a sort of post-consumer food, what I can do to try and treat it. I can recycle, I can compost my food. If I'm feeling particularly good, I'll try and take it to a food bank and give it to those less deserved. So I should try and talk to Mr. Chef later on today, actually. But there's lots of things that I can do with my food. But what does the industry do? How do factories deal with food waste? How does a restaurant deal with food waste? How do the processing plants deal with food waste? And it actually turns out they're really good at recycling. They're really good at recycling. 94% of all food waste in the food industry gets recycled. 87% goes to animal feed, and the rest goes to fertilizers, composting, and biofuels. So what waste they do have, they are really good at repurposing it. But as I said at the beginning, the best kind of food waste is no food waste at all. So how do you deal with that? And it made me think about what actually causes the issue. What is causing food waste in the industry? And there was two main things that cause it. The first one is economic behavior. And this is a weird concept, so the best idea I had was, as I'm British, and it's Christmas time, it's sort of the holiday season, and it's about mince pies. And for those who don't know, mince pies are a British tradition. From the 1st of December to the 31st of December, we eat mince pies like it's going out of fashion. We eat and eat and eat and eat, and then we get so sick and tired of mince pies, we have to wait a year until we can look at them again. So what happens is someone has to sit there and predict how many mince pies to make. And then they always overpredict. It's better to have too much than too little. And the UK alone throws away 73 million mince pies each year. And I swear to you, ask any British person, we only eat them from the 1st of December to the 31st, and 73 million get thrown away. Another good example is in the summer when we've got sort of our barbecues and we're trying to, eat lots of grilled food. The industry tries to make more burgers, make more sausages, make things to put outside on the grill. Then, if it's suddenly a really cold season or it's rainy and we don't have as many barbecues, then we throw away a lot of food. So in terms of economic behavior, a bit about me. I am a PhD scientist in the chemical biology of health and disease. I can't help this. I don't have any clue how to predict behavior better, other than saying maybe a few less mince pies. It's all right, don't worry about it. So luckily, the other issue that faces sort of the food industry is poor stock management. So it's basically the idea that food is going from a farm into a factory, into another factory, into packaging, or into a restaurant kitchen. And all these moments, there's opportunity for food to get in contact with bacteria, with chemicals, with dangerous agents. Food will touch other food which it shouldn't touch. And so this causes the food to go off or be wasted, because they can't trust it anymore. And so when I saw this, I went, right, okay, I'm a biologist, a chemist, I can think of something. But then I thought, first things first, I'm going to go and see it in person. So I went to an abattoir or a slaughterhouse. I went to a sausage factory. I went to a sandwich-making factory. All the most glamorous locations that a 27-year-old wants to go and see. I don't want to go on holiday. Let's go to an abattoir. More fun. And I found that the issue that they have is, number one, they don't have much money. The profit margins here are very slim, and the current methodologies that they have are just too expensive to really use all the time to make sure that food's being prepared well. Secondly, they have absolutely no time at all to do such a thing. The current methods that they use take minutes, sometimes hours. And to give you an idea of how quick these factories work, in a factory in America, or a few factories actually, they have to process 1,100 pigs in 60 minutes. That's a pig every 3.5 seconds is expected to be kept clean, kept healthy, and then processed without getting contaminated. How do you do that? When's the time? So I saw this issue, and I thought, right, okay, what can I do? How can I help it? And what happens if it does go wrong? There has to be a trade-off between meeting the customer's demand as well as actually making sure that you're working to a hygienic level. Because if you don't do it, you can get it very, very wrong. I don't know if many people know this, but in June 2018, we finally stopped the world's worst outbreak of food poisoning. It was one factory in South Africa, sorry, and they made sort of bologna. They made deli meat. And they brought out their product in May of 2018, and it was infected with listeria, which is one of the most prevalent causes of food poisoning. And you can see the spike of that single product going to market and how much listeria it caused. There was around 1,000 reported cases, several deaths, and then until finally the product was taken off the market. So I understand that the industry needs to meet demand, but at the same time, if they don't look after their hygiene, it can be really detrimental. And so, as I said, we sat down and me and my colleagues, we sat down and went, right, it needs to be a simple product, it needs to work quickly in a matter of seconds, and it needs to be cheap. It needs to be something that everyone can use and it can be afforded by anyone who needs it. And that's what I did, or we did. Humble brag, they did it too. So what I made was this. It's a spray that will turn from purple to any other color in the presence of chemical or bacterial contamination. It's a way of easily and simply showing whether or not you're preparing food in a healthy and safe environment, or if you might cause food poisoning by preparing your food. It's been going for a few months now, so I can't show how much we've reduced food waste just yet, but one day I will, fingers crossed. Famous last words there. But yeah, hopefully you can see what we've done here, and clearly I think what I want to take away is this is an innovation in a very sort of hidden market. I never thought I'd be working in the food industry and dealing with abattoirs and surface hygiene contamination testing kits. Like many of you, I thought I might be a race car driver or an astronaut when I was a kid, not this. But it's been a really fascinating and interesting journey. And it'd be great if you can go away and think, do you have a product or an idea that you think is really good for one market but might actually work in a different market entirely? Because at first when we came up with this, we wanted to go to hospitals. And we still do, because obviously in hospitals, bacterial contamination is a huge issue. MRSA, E. coli strains, they are huge and they're dangerous in hospitals. And one day we will get there, but it turns out that right now going with food is the best way forward for us. So thank you very much for listening. Cheers.